Facebook under growing scrutiny after reports claim a data analysis firm linked to the Trump campaign retained the personal information of more than 50 million users without their permission. Facebook says it is conducting an investigation, but on Capitol Hill, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are demanding answers.
The question is, who knew it? When did they know it? How long did this go on, and what happens to that data now?
We need to find out what we can about the misappropriation of the privacy, the private information of tens of millions of Americans. That misappropriated information used by this digital arm of the Trump campaign to manipulate American voters.
Historian Neil Ferguson joins me now from Stanford, California. He's the author of the new book, The Square and the Tower, which is quite fortuitous. One that you were booked on this show, and this story broke over the weekend. But I wanted to point out that you had actually already talked about this in your book. Here's a sentence from there. There continues to be heated debate about how big a role Cambridge Analytica played in Trump's victory. Probably its psychographic profiling of individual voters was less important than its chief executive, Alexander Nix, implied. And then, Neil, if you'll bear with me, listen to Brad Parscale. He was on 60 Minutes last October, and he said basically that he didn't even think psychographics worked. Watch.
After Mr. Trump won, Cambridge Analytica said it was key to the victory. But Parscale insists he never used psychographics. He said it doesn't work.
So you didn't use it because you didn't think it really worked, as opposed to you didn't use it because you thought it was wrong, that it's manipulative or sinister or something.
No, I don't believe it's sinister.
No? Okay. You just don't think it works.
I just don't think it works.
Neil, what do you make of all of this? Because the story over the weekend was quite explosive, and Facebook now, I guess, thinking, is it the victim or the accomplice in this situation?
Well, it's fascinating now to know exactly what the relationship was between this UK-based company, Cambridge Analytica, and Donald Trump's successful presidential campaign. Turns out there was a Cambridge University researcher who got, quite legitimately, data on ultimately 50 million Americans from Facebook. But then he broke the rules by making it available to Cambridge Analytica, who then made available to Steve Bannon and the Trump campaign. Now, the key issue is not so much whether the methodology that Cambridge Analytica touted, this psychographic stuff, mattered. The key issue is that the data were available to the Trump campaign. And remember, the most powerful tool in modern politics is Facebook advertising, because it allows you to target with extraordinary precision voters by every characteristic that they've revealed to Facebook. So the fact that the data were available on 50 million Americans via Cambridge Analytica is a huge and incredibly important revelation. Look, Dana, I had a hunch 2 years ago when I was starting work on this book that the really decisive phenomenon in our times and for our democracy was the giant online network platforms of Silicon Valley. That's what motivated me to write the book and to show the historical background to all of this. But with every week, there are new revelations about just how crucial Facebook was in the 2016 election. And these revelations are not good for Mark Zuckerberg's company at all.
Well, and the UK is already saying that they want some questions answered. It looks like he'll probably be called up to testify on Capitol Hill. And I remember listening to a podcast, and you write about this book in your book as well, that in the 1990s, big tech told us that everything was going to be better when we were all connected. How is that looking now?
Yeah, that was the promise, wasn't it? The Kool-Aid was dished out from the mid-1990s. When everybody's connected, everything will be awesome. And Mark Zuckerberg was making this argument just a couple of years ago that he was building a global community. We're all going to get together and share cat videos, and it was going to be just wonderful. And then we'd solve climate change and so forth. But actually, as I try to argue in my book, The Square and the Tower, there are all kinds of terrible problems with hyper-connectivity. If everybody is connected, two things happen. Number one, polarization. The social network platforms propel people out across the ideological spectrum to the far right and the far left. Number two, crazy stuff goes viral. And there's a third problem, which is really crucial here, and that is that these networks are extremely easy for foreign actors, not necessarily well-intentioned, to intervene in our public life. And that, of course, is, as we all know and have known now for some months, is what the Russians did. Almost as many Americans as voted saw Russian-generated content on Facebook. I don't think that was decisive in the election, but I think Facebook was.
All right, Neil Ferguson. And just by the way, the only promise that really worked out for me was the dog videos. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll keep those going around.
Some people prefer dog videos.
Thank you so much for being on the show.